You know, niggas gotta get their priorities together. Got their mind on the wrong things, spending their money in the wrong way.
Trapaholics, real trap shit.
Say you need that car with the rims and a charm, just like Jim. It's more than life. Yeah.
I'm telling you. Talk to him.
Say you need that LV bag with the belt and the hat.
That's all you got though.
It's more than life. Yeah.
Talk to him. Real.
Say you wanna turn up at the club, light some bottles, impress them girls. It's more than life.
Fucking everybody.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast. And who dat? And on this podcast, we have some main course for you. I wouldn't say that it's very tasty, but we got some main course for you. It's going over the Saints' 26-13 loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. Which, I mean, that you go back to the first 2 weeks. You know, I was talking about how you have the 24-hour rule, the 48-hour rule on celebrating wins. Well, I'm glad I completely ignored that because I took the entire weeks, those first 2-3 weeks, to enjoy it, you know, and I'm glad I did because that came to an end real quick, and it's gotten really sad and depressing since then. But we'll get into all of that. So I just want to get into a couple other things here first. But anyways, can I get a menu? And so the first thing really is that's kind of highlighted was what we were seeing, a bunch of news breaks and all these reports about the week leading up to the Chiefs game, and that's Davante Adams. You know, it looked like there were so many dots that you could connect to him coming to the New Orleans Saints, and probably the biggest one was probably, you know, the Fresno State connection, Derek Carr being his roommate and all that. But I don't see any reason he'd want to come here after the only thing, like the best definition and summing up of that game was just embarrassing. So I don't know why he would want to come to this clown show team right now, and I don't know why he'd want to come here with the whole reason he'd want to come here is to play with Derek Carr, and he's out at least 1 to 3 weeks. So I don't see Davante Adams coming here, and I don't want the Saints to give up a second or a third rounder for him, because they'll be probably with how the season's going now, they could easily be picks in the top, probably like in the 40s and the 60s. So I wouldn't want to give up that or have to take on any more of his cap. But now the big question mark of, like, where does Davante Adams go? Because I mean, the New York Jets just fired their head coach, Robert Saleh. A lot of people are saying that shouldn't matter because basically who got him fired was Aaron Rodgers, and the whole reason he'd want to go to the Jets in the first place is because of Aaron Rodgers. So I guess that's the main destination now for him, which it doesn't matter. It doesn't include the Saints anymore. At least I don't think it does. And so I guess we'll see where he goes, or if there's any other teams that sneak in there. But that's enough of the Davante Adams talk for a while, unless he just magically does end up here. But if they do, I hope they don't give up too much, because this season just feels kind of lost, and it's just really wild how it's just the change of the NFL. It can come at you so fast, and it's just wild with how great they look the first 2 weeks. But you got to take into account that half their starters are on the injury report, and the other half that aren't on there are either on PUP or IR. So, you know. And then a little other bit of news before we just get totally into the Saints Chiefs game is, so the Saints, they waived A.T. Perry because I guess he wasn't picking up the playbook or he wasn't practicing well enough. And then it's surprising really that no lower team, you know, teams with like the lower records, like the worst records in the league, none of those teams wanted to add him to their active roster or their practice squad. So he completely cleared waivers without any team wanting him or and any team wanting to jump in ahead of any other team and actually maybe give like the Saints like a conditional seventh round pick, but none of that happened. And then who does he go to? What team does he go to? And of course it's Sean Payton and Sean Payton's Denver Broncos. And I don't even really get that one. Like Sean Payton, you need to kind of let it go because you didn't even draft A.T. Perry. I guess there's thoughts out there that maybe he thinks A.T. Perry can give him a look inside the Saints locker room and their playbook. But I mean, that was part of the whole reason he didn't get to stay here. That's the whole reason he got waived because he wasn't picking up the playbook. So I don't think he could, unless he still has a copy of it. I don't think he could remember it from memory because that's why he couldn't get on the field. But still, I still really don't agree too much with the A.T. Perry waiving or cutting. I find it really hard to believe that some of those catches against the Kansas City Chiefs, the 4 targets to Mason Tipton, I find it really hard to believe that Mason Tipton wouldn't have caught some of those, or at least caught the one at the end of the game where the last throw where Derek Carr got hurt, where he just let it go. Like I wonder if Mason Tipton has a baby because I'd be afraid of him holding it if he's going to hold it with his arms wide open like that. So that's enough of that. That's just a little bit of nuggets and stuff uh, that kind of accumulated after the Saints Chiefs game. But let's just go over some total game snaps here. So this is just total domination. It was such a weird game, and just the fact that the Saints should have been in a 2-point game uh, going into the fourth quarter if it wasn't for Blake Grupe missing his second extra point of the season. I know that kind of stuff kind of you kind of wipe that aside, or you don't even notice it, or you ignore it when you're blowing out the Cowboys. You don't really, you're just kind of get them next time, buddy. But when it's in a tight game and it's in a game where it could make it less than a possession, one possession game, to where all you need is 3 points to take the lead by one. It's maddening. So and that just takes all the morale and the motivation out of the team that they gain from scoring the touchdown and thinking that they're going to make it just a 2-point lead. And then you miss an extra point. And it was a good snap, good hold, good blocking, and you just missed it. If I see another one of those or a crucial field goal kick miss, I think it might be Charlie Smith's season, Irish kicker season, because that kind of stuff is just maddening. But talking about how the Saints were just completely dominated, and it's wild, really, that they were in what should have been a 2-point game going into the fourth quarter, because I mean they only had 14 first downs. The Kansas City Chiefs had twice as many of that. They had 28 first downs, and then just in the rushing yards, the Saints had only had 15 carries for 46 yards and no touchdowns. So they just couldn't get anything going after that first drive, where where it looked like they were moving and were going to go and score on their first drive of the game, just like they have all season. And then we all know what happens with Derek Carr throwing a lollipop interception. Just with that kind of stuff, it just makes me feel like I don't think I was like a pro Derek Carr exactly, but I was a backer and hopeful of Derek Carr. But after that lollipop interception, like 11-year pro with $150 million contract, I can't. I'm done with Derek Carr, and I'm also done with Dennis Allen as well, just because that was horrible coaching in that game. The fact that they won the toss but selected to receive the ball against them, especially with them knowing the struggles that they've been having on offensive line and running the ball with no Taysom Hill. Like, did they really think they were going to march down the field and score a touchdown? Like, I guess they've kind of been doing that all season, but not coming down to your fourth or fifth offensive line. So that was one of the big coaching mistakes in that game. But then also the horrible play calling. I don't know if you put this on Clint Kubiak or Dennis Allen, but the horrible play calling during the 2-minute drill, to where they just literally took 20 seconds for them to go 3 and out and give the ball right back to the Kansas City Chiefs and have them march down the field. And and be able to get 3 points, which it would have been a closer game. It would have just been, let's see, it wouldn't have been for that. It would have been just a 17, 13-7 game. And just little bitty things here and there just makes your team lose motivation and lose their heart, and morale just completely sinks due to stuff like that. And then it was the horrible timeouts that they were taking in the second half. They just completely wasted all their timeouts in just stupid situations. I think one was like it was like a 2nd and 1, and you got to play, and then they had to call a timeout when it's 2nd and 1. Like, what is so? I just don't know what kind of mythical type of play call you're calling in that it takes so long that you have to call a timeout when it's 2nd and 1, 2nd and 1, 2nd and 2. Like, just run the ball and pick up the first down. I guess that's maybe easier said than done, but this game was hard to watch and just embarrassing. And then I guess some more coaching. I'm still on Dennis Allen here for those 4th and 8 attempts. Trying to go for it in 4th and 8. I know Blake Groupie had missed an extra point, but heck, just with how the game is going and thinking that you're going to pick up a 4th and 8, you might as well have just kicked the field goal, tried to kick a 60-yard field goal, and just hope and pray that you get it, but they didn't. But yeah, so I'm just completely over Dennis Carr, and I'm completely over Derek Carr as well. Dennis Allen and Derek Carr. Like, I was hopeful for Derek Carr just for the reason I've watched a lot of him. I've seen a lot of him from watching Raiders games and stuff like that. But he like we were hoping that he'd gotten his Oakland Raiders swag back 2015, 2016. Derek Carr, I just no. I think he's more of what we saw all of 2023, and that's what these last 3 games have felt like of the 2023 Pete Carmichael offense, and it's not been good, not a good feeling at all. And then we were at rushing yards, so the Saints couldn't rush it at all, but the Kansas City Chiefs didn't have like a great per carry average, but they were picking up 3 yards, 4 yards, 5 yards. They never really ripped off like any big gains, but they were consistent, and they were consistently running it as well. So they had 39 carries for 139 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like, it's crazy to think that the Saints have had rushing days where their opponent had similar rushing yards to what they had in this game, but they had similar rushing yards to what Kansas City had in this game, and they still lost. But you see that if you have a game where you run the ball that well, you should basically blow the other team out. But the Saints just for some reason aren't able to do that. And then just total yards, the Saints had 220 total yards. That's just absolutely pathetic. And then the Kansas City Chiefs had almost 500, 460. And then I think a lot of people want to talk about like penalties and stuff, and that's happened like the last couple games where the Saints have during the game and the majority of the first 3 quarters, the Saints have like less penalties called on them, almost like have like no penalties called on them, and then the team that they're playing is getting more penalties called on them. The Chiefs were getting called for false starts and holding and unsportsmanlike conduct for hands to the face and things like that. But the Saints really weren't called for anything until it was a tight game in the 4th quarter, and then you get these pass interference on Paulson Adebo, which the first no call on him was a worse no call. That was a pass that should have been pass interference, but the second one they called him on probably shouldn't have. And then the no call when the Saints are still trying to fight back and come back in the game, that deep ball to Chris Olave should have been a pass interference on Kansas City, but it seems like the Chiefs refs the refs seem to have gotten all the Kansas City Chiefs. They get all their penalties out of the way in the first 3 quarters, and then they just dump them on to the Saints. It felt like. And then time of possession, the Saints had the ball for 20 minutes, and the Chiefs had it for for 40 minutes, like twice as long. That's just crazy that the game was even as close as it was because the Saints were pretty much getting dominated like the entire game. It is really crazy, really, that it was even a 3 point game. It should have been 2 point game, and then they just kind of the game got out of hand and and right after scoring off of the fat guy touchdown from Khalil Saunders, they just gave up a 70-yard catch and run by Juju Smith-Schuster, who been a couple of years since he's even had a 100-yard game. Same thing with Kareem Hunt, who had 27 carries for 102 yards and a touchdown, but just a long of 8 yards. Like they didn't give up a longer run than 9 yards to Patrick Mahomes. So the Chiefs, they were just consistent with it. Let's see. So now on to just some individual player stats, leaders of the stats here. So Derek Carr, he was 18 for 28, 165 yards and 2 touchdowns with 1 interception and 1 sack for 8 yards, and the long of 43, which that was the 43-yard touchdown to Rashid Shaheed, which I felt once they got that, I thought like in the first 2 games of the season, I thought that was like the jumper cables that may have the Saints come alive a little bit and maybe get things going, but they're just not the same team with all the injuries that they have. They're just not the same team that they were the first 2 weeks. And then in rushing, just your leading rusher was Alvin Kamara, just off of 11 carries for 26 yards with a long of 9. And he also had 8 targets for 6 and 6 catches for 40 yards with a long of 14. But just after the first drive, where it really looked like the Saints were kind of getting stuff going, you had that crazy cutback run by Alvin Kamara where it looked like he was about to lose like 10 yards, and he cut it back and ended up. I think that was probably the play where he picked up the 9 yards. It looked like it was going to be a 10-yard loss, and then ended up being a 9-yard gain. I just don't. I just like the team just completely quit. It felt like the team just completely quit after that lollipop interception by Derek Carr, just throwing it up for grabs. I guess he's trying to make it out of bounds, but if you're going to do something like that, make sure it gets out of bounds. And man, I was heated after that. I was really heated just watching how the play played out, and it looked like it was going to be another pick six. Oh man, I was about to tear my TV because of that. That had me so mad. Thankfully, at least it wasn't a pick six, but still, that kind of thing, it's a play early in the game that doesn't really decide the game, but it really felt like it. I felt that the game was pretty much over after that. And I guess I just like, this is like the only applaud I can seem to give the Saints the past 3 weeks, is that at least they kept fighting, I guess. And then you had for receivers, you had 9 targets for Rashid Shaheed on 9 targets with only 4 catches for 86 yards and a touchdown off that 43-yard bomb. And then the one that's just kind of crazy is that you had Chris Olave with only 4 targets for 2 catches and 10 yards. Like maybe the Chiefs just did a good job of taking him away. I don't know, but you have to get your best skills position players more involved in that. I'm sorry, but Mason Tipton shouldn't be your go-to guy on 4th and 8, and him having just as many targets as Chris Olave, and he had 4 targets and 1 catch, and he had like 2 drops, and the big time drop on 4th and 8 when the Saints were still kind of in the game. And a little surprised to see that Juwan Johnson actually had 5 targets and 5 catches for 31 yards and 11 a long of 11. So maybe Juwan Johnson can maybe get things going. I would say, hell, maybe Carr is going to start targeting the tight ends a little bit more, which he did throw a touchdown to Foster Monroe. But I guess that comes to kind of like a screeching halt because he's hurt now. And then on defense, just really the only defender that really matters is Colin Saunders, who had the fat guy interception, had an interception and returned it for 37 yards. They were talking about how he looked like a high school running back, and of course they did the research, and found out that he was. And then he had seven combined tackles, 2 assists, 2 solo and 5 assists. And then Brian Bresee had a sack. Chase Young had a sack. Finally, Chase Young had a sack. Even in this game, that Chase Young and Brian Bresee had a sack. It's still the Saints have to be kings of maybe like pressure, but like almost sacks and almost sacks. I know it. I know it's Patrick Mahomes. He's a freaking wizard when it comes to like avoiding pressure and making crazy throws on the move. But still, it's maddening. It felt like they had like 10 opportunities to sack Patrick Mahomes in this game, and we're only able to come away with 2. And then your 2 like leading tacklers, you had Demario Davis with 11 tackles. It was good to see, at least good to see him back out there. 11 combined, 5 solo, 6 assists. And then you had Alfarine Orgy with 10 tackles with 7 solo and 3 assists. And other than that, the defense didn't really produce a whole lot. I guess Alontae Taylor had one good play where they threw it in the tried to make some. They were trying to do some throwback uh, uh, run to the outside there, and he blew it up and knocked it out of the alligator kid's hands and forced a fumble. But of course, we know how the Saints have been all year in recovering fumbles. So of course they couldn't recover possibly a game changing fumble. So those are just the game stats and just kind of like some individual stats. Uh, Go over my MVPs and hot takes and picks and scores. So MVP, I mean, I swear, I'm sorry, Who Dat Nation. I'm sorry. It seems like every week I pick a pick I pick an MVP, just singly on offense or defense, and I'll pick one after the game for special teams if there's even anyone worthy of special teams. But I swear, the last 3 weeks, my MVP, I picked my MVP who I think is going to have the best game, and then they have like the worst game they've had all season, or they get hurt during the game. That's Rashid Shaheed, Tyrann Matthews, and now Derek Carr, who I picked as my MVP. And my reason for picking him is I know leading up to this game, Derek Carr had only won 3. He was 3-14 in his 17 games against the Chiefs. But still, even in those 3 wins he had were some of his best games that he's ever had. So I was thinking, he had some of his worst games against the Chiefs, but he's also had some of his best games of his career against the Chiefs. But we have to go with the worst games of his career because that's definitely what this was. This was definitely, you could argue, his worst game of this year because he was 18 of 28 for 165 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, a sack, and 8 with the 8-yard loss and an 89.3 rating. But yeah, it wasn't just the bad stats and the fact that even just early on that lollipop interception that he threw, it literally looked like Derek Carr was seeing ghosts. He had me thinking of Sam Darnold when he said that one time that he's seeing ghosts, and Derek Carr was out there seeing ghosts for sure, throwing passes like that, and just sometimes it just seemed like he was just throwing up passes as a prayer to Rashid Shaheed. I'm honestly surprised he didn't get picked off more than that. But of course, with me jinxing these players off of who picking my MVP, of course he got hurt like towards the end of the game, like on his last throw, I guess. So he hurt his oblique, I guess, on the throw. He was saying he felt it pop, and then he fell back, got knocked down, and fell down pretty hard. But I guess it wasn't due to the hit. Maybe he's just saying that to be like a good teammate and not put it on his offensive line or saying that his offensive line is the reason that he got hurt. But anyway, so we're not going to have Derek Carr, I guess, for at least a couple games with this short period between having a game on Monday, playing on Sunday, and then playing on the next Thursday. I doubt he plays during that stretch, those 2 games against the Buccaneers and the Broncos, which are they just feel like, from how good they looked the first 2 weeks, to you got some must-win games. They got to try to come out of this close to 500 still. or this season is definitely easily over. So I picked Derek Carr, and that was just a horrible pick. I think coming up next week for the game against the Bucks, I'm going to pick someone that's maybe just completely irrelevant to the Saints' success, because picking players that you think are actually are important to the Saints and actually put up big numbers and can expect to have a good day on defense ends up coming to bite me. So I just need to pick a completely irrelevant player, maybe a player that's on the practice squad or something, so I don't jinx us any further this season. And then that's about the only positive from this game is my hot take was right. I predicted that I predicted that I predicted that Patrick Mahomes wasn't going to throw a touchdown in this game, and he didn't. So that's real crazy how the Saints defense they're definitely bend but don't break, bend up, don't break, bend up, don't break. They give up tons of yards and are usually able to stop teams in the red zone. But when your offense is completely stagnant and just constantly going three and out, and they're on the field for literally twice as long uh, as your offense, then there's only so much they can do. Towards the end of the game, you got Tyrann Matthews like falling down, and Juju Smith-Schuster picking up like what a 50-yard gain. Like that's just the kind of stuff that starts happening when the differential between time of possession is so skewed like that. It's not good. And so let's see, who would our actual MVPs be coming out of this game? I guess you could go on offense, which really it's almost really nobody, honestly. I guess I'll give it to Rashid Shaheed, because he did his best. He did his best impression of the first 2 weeks by having that 43-yard touchdown that looked like it at first looked like it kind of ignited the Saints, cut the lead to what 7-10. So I mean, it was still a ball game up until the 14 minutes and 16-second mark of the fourth quarter. I mean, it was still a close game, even though stat wise, the Saints were getting absolutely dominated. And then defense, pretty easy to pick the defense. Colin Saunders, he was about one of the only players on defense that played well, and I wouldn't say it's necessarily because of his other stuff he did, the 7 tackles, 2 solo, 5 assists, or anything like that. It's just he made what should have been a game-changing play, and it was, because they ended up going down and getting the touchdown and cutting it to what should have been 2-point lead, and that just the life kind of got sucked out of them on that missed extra point. And then the fact that they just turned around right after and gave up a 50-yard play to Juju Smith-Schuster, the defense did. So, man, this game, just like the past 2 games as well, on top of this, it's just hard to watch. So that's your defensive NFC, Colin Saunders. And then I think this is maybe 2 weeks in a row that we have Matthew Hayball, who I think kind of low key had a good game in this one too, because he almost averaged 50 yards a punt. He got one down inside the 20, a long of 53, and off of 4 punts for 199 yards. Like I thought he did pretty good. I know a couple of them were line drives, and he got a little bit lucky by some bounces, but I don't think I can recall Lou Hedley having a punt over 50 yards like all year last year. So I give it to Matthew Hayball again. Definitely can't give it to any of the returners. You got Jamal Williams almost kneeling at the 1-yard line. Like, talk about some boneheaded stuff you're seeing from this team. And coming into this season, we were talking about how Dan Rizzi was like one of the best special teams coaches in the league, and he was like the backer behind the whole new kickoff rules and all that. But the Saints special teams the last 2 weeks, besides the punter, has been low key trash, and maybe not even low key, maybe just obviously freaking trash with this kind of stupid stuff their return men have been doing and missing extra points. Like, man, it's just nothing good, nothing really to celebrate here. And so that's the Chiefs game and the picks and the scores and MVP stats, all of that. Really, only the last thing to kind of note here is so now we know Derek Carr is out. Is going to be out for the next, I would say, 1 to 4 weeks, at least the next two games. I'd be really surprised if coming back from an injury that he comes and plays on Thursday night against the Denver Broncos, who have one of the best defenses in the league. They just absolutely pantsed the Raiders on Sunday. So I wouldn't expect much more out of the Saints coming and playing them, especially with the beat up Derek Carr. So I guess your question is, so no Derek Carr, is it Jake Haener season or is it Spencer Rattler season? Really, on my take for that is I, to win and just for fan excitement, probably want to see Spencer Rattler, and not really sure who I think will be starting. There's been reports that they feel as if Rattler's the better option, and then reports that you think there's reasons for Jake Haener to be the starter. So the fan in me would want to see Rattler and would think that Spencer Rattler would be your better option to winning. Hopefully, you're able to get Kendra Miller back finally, or maybe Taysom Hill back, so at least they could maybe rely on the running game, which they weren't able to do in this game at all with no Taysom Hill, no Kendra Miller, whatever we know that he'll bring to the game. But if I'm really being honest and I'm thinking about the future of these two quarterbacks, I don't know if I want to throw Spencer Rattler into the fire behind this offensive line. So for his development, I would think that I probably would rather start the second year pro in Jake Haener because, yeah, Jake Haener he's a good player too, and he looks he's looked good at moments and all that. But when you look at both of these players, Spencer Rattler and Jake Haener, I think Jake Haener has maybe a higher floor than Rattler, but Spencer Rattler's ceiling is like sky high compared to Jake Haener, just with his mobility and cannon of an arm. So I think I would feel a little bit better. I know it's horrible to say, but throwing Jake Haener to the woods instead of Spencer Rattler, who could, I know he was just a fifth round pick, but the Saints fans are grasping at everything for hopefully your future quarterback. Because we I guess got done saying I'm completely over Derek Carr and the Dennis Allen project. That was hopeful, but you can only hold out so much hope. And this weird thing with Derek Carr now, like he didn't seem to really be that injury prone when he was when he was with the Raiders, especially the Oakland Raiders. But now, I mean, this feels so similar to last year, like when he got knocked out of 3 games. Like I feel almost like it probably isn't true, but it almost feels like Derek Carr, like when a game looks rough or he's having a bad game, he kind of gets injured and dips out of games. And it definitely felt like that kind of last year because he supposedly get hurt in these games and have to come out of the game, and then next week he'd be starting. I guess maybe it's different this time. I guess it looks like it maybe is a serious injury, but I don't know. It's just odd and just weird how this season feels so similar to last year with how things are playing out. And like the thing is, I guess there seems to be more injuries, way more injuries than there were than the team before in 2023. But anyways, I just hopefully we get something special out of either Jake Haener or Spencer Rattler. It would be nice to see something positive, but man, it's really hard to be when you got half your starters on injury report and your starting quarterback. But anyways, we'll be back in a couple days to talk about Saints Bucks, and hopefully those injury reports improve a little bit. Hopefully we can get some players back that can maybe improve the running game. Cesar Ruiz, Taysom Hill, Kendra Miller. At least that would maybe help our young quarterbacks a little bit. But anyways, I think that's all I have for you. So who dat? And can I get a check, please?